Welcome back to the deep dive. So today, we're going to be taking a closer look at something you sent our way, a real estate listing for, well, it says a 3 to 4 bedroom tropical private residence in Phuket, Thailand.
Hmm.
And instead of just like endlessly scrolling through these things online, we're going to actually like really pick apart the details of this one
Yeah.
and see what we can learn from it. So really the question here is, what makes this property noteworthy? What can we glean about, luxury living and investment in Phuket just by looking at, the specifics of this one listing?
Right. This listing is doing more than just, listing out specs, right? It's telling a story.
Yeah.
And by looking at the features that it's highlighting, the community it's a part of, even just like the way it's presented, we can get some really interesting insights into this market and, like what it is that appeals to potential buyers like yourself. So where do you want to start?
Well, let's jump right into the property itself.
Okay.
It mentions 3 to 4 bedrooms and 4 to 5 bathrooms right off the bat.
Right.
Which, that already suggests a focus on space.
Yeah.
And maybe catering to like larger families, people that are going to have a lot of guests. And then we get to the land plot size, which ranges from 341 to 408 square meters, with a built-up area of 262 to 359.
Yeah, that's a pretty good chunk of space.
They're pretty substantial, yeah.
Especially for a private residence.
Especially for like a private, yeah. And then, it hits you with some of the key features, like a private 4 by 10 meter swimming pool.
Wow. Yeah.
That's pretty generous for a private home.
Big.
Fully equipped kitchen, double parking, high ceilings. What strikes you as the most significant there?
I think it's really interesting how right away they're emphasizing this idea of lifestyle and convenience.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
especially in Phuket's climate, that private pool, that's not just a feature, right?
Yeah.
It's a major selling point
Yeah.
because it speaks to relaxation, privacy.
Yeah.
And then, fully equipped kitchen speaks to you want to move in and not have to worry about a thing.
Seamless transition, right?
Exactly. And even things like the double parking and high ceilings, I think they all kind of contribute to this overall sense of spaciousness and just ease of living. They're thinking about your day-to-day experience, I think, when they're highlighting these features.
Yeah, and then it goes on to say that they offer both freehold and leasehold ownership options. Now, for you, if you were considering a property like this in Thailand, that's a pretty important distinction, right?
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah. Could you unpack that a little bit?
For sure. I mean, for you really need to understand the difference between those two things. So, think of freehold as outright ownership.
Right.
You own the building and the land. It gives you the maximum amount of control, long-term security.
Okay.
Leasehold, on the other hand, is more like they're granting you the right to occupy and use the property for a certain amount of time. Usually a long-term lease, but still. And, that has big implications for things like resale, inheritance, and how much control you really have. So it's really a fundamental consideration for anyone who is a potential buyer.
Yeah. And then, it's interesting. It also mentions that it includes a furniture package.
Yeah.
Which, again, really simplifies things for a buyer, especially if they're not based in Phuket already.
Yeah.
And then they offer an installment plan. It says 6 to 12 months. And, maybe that opens it up to more people that wouldn't have been able to consider it otherwise. And then it lists the price range, which is 19.9 to 25.5 million Thai baht.
Okay.
So, all of those things combined seem pretty strategic.
Yeah. I mean, the furniture package, that's something that we're seeing more and more in the Phuket luxury market.
Yeah.
And I think it really just makes things easier for overseas investors, who are looking they don't want to set up a home from scratch. They want the property to be ready to rent out right away.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It also just speaks to this desire for a hassle-free purchase,
Sure.
You want to buy it and then you can start enjoying it or renting it out. Right.
Yeah.
And then the installment plan, I think that also suggests that they understand that this is a big investment for people.
Right.
And they're trying to make it more accessible by saying, hey, you can spread out the payments over a certain amount of time.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the community itself, it really emphasizes that it's a gated community.
Right.
Talking about privacy and security. They also mention high-quality construction using premium materials and modern design.
Required.
But, I feel like any listing would probably say something like that.
Yeah, right.
So What are some things that would actually lend credence to those claims?
Um, I think that's a good point. While those are like kind of common phrases, the fact that they're leading with that gated community aspect,
Yeah.
that to me, that really does signal that they're prioritizing things like security and exclusivity,
Mm-hmm.
which, are really valued in the luxury market.
Okay.
Um, when it comes to premium materials and modern design, I mean, ideally, we would want to see more specifics,
Yeah.
right? Like mentions of particular architects or developers,
Right.
people that are known for quality in the region, maybe even some details about the types of materials used.
Yeah.
But in the absence of that, sometimes, the reputation of the agency, which we'll talk about later,
Sure.
can give you a degree of reassurance, and
Uh,
I mean, the fact that they're emphasizing peaceful tropical surroundings. I mean, they're definitely playing into, the lifestyle appeal of Phuket.
for sure. Yeah, and speaking of appeal, it goes on to say that it is, quote, move-in ready with furnishings, and it really emphasizes the excellent rental potential. It says, in quote, one of Phuket's most sought-after locations. Now, what makes that claim believable?
Well, I mean, you have to keep in mind that Phuket has this, really well-established reputation
Sure.
as a top tourist destination.
Yeah.
I mean, they get tons of visitors all year round, and a lot of them are looking for high-quality accommodation.
Yeah.
So having a property that is move-in ready, that's furnished, it really minimizes, like, the downtime
Right.
and the effort that it takes to start actually making money
Mm,
from renting the place.
right.
Um, the fact that it's in a gated community, that might also appeal to a certain type of renter who, really values their security
Yeah.
and amenities. So while, excellent is, I guess, subjective,
Yeah.
I think the underlying factors of, the location, the fact that it's ready to go, those do support that claim.
Okay. And then it gives us the location details, which are pretty brief but very impactful. Phuket, Thailand.
Right.
I mean, for anyone that knows anything about Southeast Asia, Phuket has a certain cachet to it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's not just a random tropical
No,
island.
no, no.
What makes it special?
Well, Phuket has a really like well-developed infrastructure,
Okay.
a wide range of attractions,
Yeah.
and a pretty significant international presence. And so all of that makes it really appealing to, you know, long-term residents, but also short-term visitors,
Right.
which helps support a really a really strong and robust property market.
Yeah.
And, that's ultimately what drives a lot of that rental income potential. I mean, the location being desirable, that's a fundamental driver of property value and investment interest.
All right. So let's get into some of the more specific details that it gives us. It gives us a property ID. TH03 says it was updated on March 24th, 2025. Lists the property size as 262 square meters with a land area of 341 square meters. Now, this is where something kind of jumped out at me.
Okay.
It refers to it in the main description as a residence,
Right.
but then in the detailed property type, it lists it as penthouse.
Huh. That's interesting.
That seems like maybe a discrepancy.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely does.
What do you think might explain that?
That's a really good catch, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
So a penthouse, typically that refers to like a top floor apartment
Okay.
in a multi-story building.
Yeah.
So using that term to describe what's also being called a private residence,
Yeah.
that could mean a couple of things.
Okay.
It could be that they're, kind of using it as a marketing term
Right.
to give this sense of luxury, premium finishes, exclusivity.
Sure.
Maybe it's like, even if it is a standalone villa, maybe it's designed in a way that maximizes privacy and views like you would get in a penthouse.
Okay.
Or it could be that it's part of a smaller low-rise development
Right.
where they're kind of positioning these residences as having like penthouse level features and appeal.
Yeah, makes sense.
But it's definitely something that, a potential buyer would need to clarify
Yeah,
to really understand what kind of property we're talking about here.
absolutely. It also reiterates some of the featured amenities, gated community, private pool, really driving those points home. So now let's switch gears a little bit and look at the real estate agency behind this listing.
Okay.
Ocean Worldwide Company Limited.
Okay.
They say that they were established in 2004 and they specialize in luxury properties.
Oh.
What can we kind of infer from that?
Well, an agency that's been around for that long, over 2 decades.
Yeah.
Um, And that has focused specifically on the luxury market in Phuket. You know, that suggests to me that they have a really deep understanding of this particular segment.
Yeah.
They've probably, seen the market go up and down.
Right.
They understand what luxury buyers are looking for. They probably have a lot of connections in the industry. And, just the fact that they specialize in this, it suggests that they have a certain focus
Yeah.
and expertise that might be reassuring to someone who's looking at these, high-end properties.
Yeah, and then it goes on to say that they use technology on a global network,
Sure.
which, in today's world, especially for international real estate,
Yeah.
that seems almost essential.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's almost table stakes at this point.
Yeah, yeah. What I thought was interesting is that they also emphasize a human-centric approach.
Right.
So how do you see those two elements working together in a transaction like this?
I think it's a smart combination.
Yeah.
So the technology allows them to reach a wider audience, potentially international, through things like online listings, virtual tours, digital marketing. And, a global network extends their reach even further. But, when it comes to luxury real estate, that human-centric approach is still really, really important.
Yeah.
Because, high net worth individuals, they expect a certain level of personalized service.
Of course.
It involves understanding their individual needs, offering tailored advice, guiding them through what can be a very complex process.
Yeah.
So the human element, that provides reassurance, that builds relationships. That's something that technology alone just can't do.
Okay. And then it gives a bunch of contact info.
Right.
Full address, local phone number. They give a direct WhatsApp link,
Okay.
their email address. That multi-channel approach, I feel like that's pretty deliberate.
Yeah, for sure. And it just, it gives people options, right?
Yeah.
Like caters to different communication preferences.
Yeah.
And makes it as easy as possible for potential buyers to reach out however they prefer to do it.
Right.
The WhatsApp thing, I think that's particularly relevant, for international inquiries.
Yeah, and this is where their digital strategy really comes into focus because they even mention that they're on Apple Maps, Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
Wow, that's a pretty big digital footprint.
Pretty broad. Yeah. What does that tell you about their overall marketing efforts?
I think being on that many platforms shows that they have a pretty sophisticated marketing strategy.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's multifaceted, right?
Yeah.
Because, being on places like Spotify and Apple Podcasts, that suggests that they're not just, putting out listings,
Yeah.
right? They're actually investing in content marketing.
Right.
They're trying to engage with potential clients in a way that's, that goes beyond just transactions. They're trying to build brand awareness
Yeah.
and establish themselves as like, a source of knowledge. Like if you want to know about luxury real estate in Phuket, they want you to think of them. And I mean, being on Apple Maps is smart too, because that helps people discover them locally.
Makes sense. They also provide links to their privacy policy, their terms of service, which, I think speaks to transparency and professionalism. And then, for you, our listener, if you're interested in this property, it gives you a very clear inquire about this property form,
Okay.
a schedule a tour feature with a little calendar showing the available dates. You can directly contact the agent. It lists their name, Bolo Atif, and you can view listings from them.
Very user-friendly.
Very user-friendly, very action-oriented.
Yeah, I mean, all of that is designed to make things as easy as possible for people who are interested.
Right.
Right? It makes it easy to get more information, to picture yourself visiting the property, to connect with the agent who's responsible for the listing. They're trying to reduce friction and encourage people to actually take that next step.
Yeah. So to bring it all together, this Phuket residence, or maybe, luxury villa marketed as a penthouse.
Right.
It really paints this picture of upscale tropical living with the private amenities, the security within a gated community,
Right.
the prime location, and then, the inclusion of furnishings, the potential financing options, all of that really adds to the appeal, especially if someone is considering it as an investment with rental income potential.
Exactly. It's like, they're taking the allure of a really desirable location, and then they're combining it with, features that are designed for both comfortable living and, a good return on investment.
Right.
And then the way that the agency is marketing it just further reinforces that idea that this is, part of the luxury segment of the Phuket market.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's where I want to bring it back to you, our listener. Taking all these details into account, the size, the private pool, the gated community, the location in Phuket, the price range, even the marketing approach of Ocean Worldwide. What does this listing tell you about what's happening right now in the luxury real estate market in Phuket? And, what aspects of this offering really stand out to you, whether you're thinking about personal enjoyment or as a potential investment? It really makes you think about, what does luxury even mean in a tropical setting? What are the factors that drive value in this kind of international property market?
Yeah, I mean, I think this listing is a good example of what's driving demand in that luxury market in Phuket,
Yeah.
right? It shows us that people value privacy,
Mm.
security, the fact that it's move-in ready, the potential for rental income. So I think by looking at these details, you can start to form your own opinion
Yeah.
about, what are the opportunities and what are the things that you really need to think about if you're considering this market.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, for you, what's the most compelling aspect of this property? Or maybe the most intriguing?
That's a great question. It really is more than just a listing, right? It's like a glimpse into a world of, luxury and possibility. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into this Phuket property. We'll see you next time.